Hey there hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today we're going to take a look at Wild Hearts, the new Monster Hunter rival coming out of EA, developed by Omega Force. If you're unfamiliar with Omega Force, they typically do the Dynasty Warrior games and the spin-off ones as well, like the Berserk, Zelda, and Fire Emblem Warriors. But now we're getting a hunting style game. Is that even a genre? I mean, I guess it is. But anyway, I wanted to show the trailers they had released and talk about what my impressions of it are. So keep in mind that this is a game due out in February of 2023, so it should be out in a few months. But let's quickly gloss over all the comparisons to Monster Hunter, because obviously it's going to be a lot like Monster Hunter. Everybody and anybody will be making all these stupid comparisons, and sadly we can't really escape it. I just want to point out that basically everything you have in Monster Hunter seems like it's going to be here as well, including roars and enraged roars staggering players, tremors on ground slams, flash bombs, barrel bombs, and most likely traps, though we don't see those in the trailers. So it looks like all the itty bitty mechanics as well are going to be exactly like Monster Hunter. It's not just, oh, you fight big monsters, like all the same tools and systems appear to be there. That being said, I really want to focus on talking about everything else. I'm going to start with the setting. While Monster Hunter Rise is very much an Eastern themed game, for the most part Monster Hunter really hasn't seen much of that. So Wild Hearts here, looking very much like ancient Japan with a twist, is kind of cool. The landscapes are looking particularly gorgeous, but I'm not sure how much of them we're actually going to be traversing or how much of them we're going to see any use, unfortunately. I say that because the monsters look really flippin' huge, so I assume there's only a few places in the map where they can actually engage them. And it's going to be like current gen Monster Hunter where there's going to be a lot of transitional zones, but very few dedicated spots to fight, I feel. Though getting that zipline machine looks pretty sweet because that tells me the maps are going to be very, very open and kind of be like free-form traversal and not shoehorn you into specific paths. Seems like an obvious duh, but most games make a point to having big areas look open, but then having your traversal be extremely linear. That's actually one of my biggest complaints with Steel Rising. But so far, the general vibe of the game and the look of it, the aesthetic, I can really get behind it. It looks nice, it's pretty. And next, regarding the weapons shown, I believe we've seen a sword that breaks apart into a chain whip, a bow, an umbrella that allows you to glide, and tonfas that Lego together to a throwing shuriken. Obviously there will be some more weapons and they will showcase them as the game gets closer to launch, but it seems like the weapons are dual purpose weapons or at least have multiple functions within their kits. This is interesting, but it also makes me think there won't be very many weapons, like 4 to 6. I don't think there's anything wrong with giving more tools for weapons and keeping the weapon count down as long as we have a robust moveset. That's amazing, great. Sort of like how Dauntless had the glaive that could, build up and charge shoot, so it's melee and ranged, or the hammer also did the shelling, so it's like a melee and shell weapon. I dig the multifunction weapons, they're cool. The Wild Hearts trailer didn't really show much footage of the weapons themselves in action, so we actually didn't get a good view of the movesets or anything, so I'm going to reserve judgment on the weapons until we actually get a clearer picture on that. Me being me though, I hope we do get a form of a gun, like a giant flintlock or a primitive cannon. I am going to settle for the bow that they showed regardless, but a man can dream, right? But overall, the weapons do look cool enough. I don't hate them, they look original enough. I'm interested in the umbrella too, but yeah, so let's move on. And then we have the crafting stuff, which everyone is screaming, oh my god, Fortnite, because they're packing extra chromosomes. But the building system looks to be the most unique aspect of the game on the surface, allowing us to create walls to stop charges, that's cool, or the big Acme hammer, but I feel like this is going to play no differently to hunters bringing tools like bombs or traps with a mix of weird gadgets like Palico stuff, so I'm all in on that. I think we'll probably have a cooldown system shared between all the craftables so you don't just spam crafting stuff all the time, but that may also lead us to spamming the same thing like the bomb every time the cooldown's up and forcing us to use a single craft, which would be kind of lame. So I do hope we get some sort of skills that allow us to either focus or expand the utility of each of the different crafts, or do something just so we don't just spam either one tool whenever the cooldown's up or just tools all the time every time. Again though, I'm gonna need to see more of the game before I criticize it too much. But for now though, yeah, crafting that Acme hammer looks pretty win to me. That looks fun. Unfortunately from here, I have to start pointing out things I'm having issues with. First is that the game is due out in just a few months, and even from the gameplay trailers, I'm concerned with the performance of the game. A lot of the clips are cutscenes, and only a small amount of actual gameplay footage is shown in actual combat, and even in that 7-minute gameplay trailer. It's spliced with a lot of cinematic clips, so between that and the weirdly unappealing textures and the no UI, I'm concerned with pop-ins, load times, game performance, and what the game's actually going to look like. This is mostly a moot concern, as it could all be just like, an old build. We don't know what the performance is really going to be like, and it could just be gravy. But I have to, keep that little pessimism out there because, it's an EA game. In regards to the, one monster fight we've seen with Kingtus, it actually kind of looks boring. Like, Kingtus looks like he's got a pretty good move pool. Like, I think he counted 7 or 8 attacks, which doesn't sound like a lot, but hey, I think Dauntless monsters had 4. They all just look super slow and predictable, and the time between attacks just felt really huge. Like, he just stood there a lot. It felt like a lot of the times you were just, wailing on a big immobile rock. I hope Wild Hearts does have a form of low rank, high rank kind of thing, where this is just slow because it's an early tier of the monster, and the harder versions do get faster, because it's looking like not much more than a punching bag. Though again, it could be like the first monster too, who knows, we haven't seen any other fights. I just wanted to point out that the one that they did show looked like it was more about showcasing the weapons and the tools against a barely moving target, and not really the fight and the combat. To add on to the fight, dude, the camera looks atrociously bad. In the few clips of in-game footage we actually have, the camera was all over the place, getting snapped in, on, and around the monster and the environment. Again, could be an early build thing, but we've seen how EA handles this stuff, and for the most part, what we see is what we get. So I have to kind of, reserve myself, because stuff like this is probably going to fly with EA, and I don't like it, and I want to point it out, but there's nothing I can do about it. And then lastly, my main concern is EA as a whole. While I have no problems with other companies branching into the hunting genre, I really want Dauntless to do well, I do have a problem with EA. To me, it feels like EA took a studio and they said, hey, we want you to make this genre of a game, go make that. And that's what we got. Which again, isn't bad, but it being published by EA makes me think it's going to be a relatively short experience, since this is their first step into the genre, and they're not going to put too much effort into funding or resources behind it unless it sells extremely well. So I feel like the game could be great, but ultimately short, and have maybe a dozen fights in the 4 weapons that we've seen, just kind of as a proof of concept to see how the audience reacts. And then maybe if the game sells well, then they'll greenlight DLC and an expansion or a future title, stuff like that. Also, God forbid they fill this thing with battle passes and microtransactions, and then try to fund the extra, content, DLC, and expansions based on the microtransactions, because EA would do that, and we all know that. I'm just concerned. EA has a track record of putting out a bunch of bad stuff and just spreading its stuff too thin, but I hope this game does well. I just, can't really bring myself to get excited for an EA title. Because the game does look appealing to me, I like where this is going, I just worry about what we're actually going to receive. I don't trust game trailers or developers much these days, since we've all been burned way too many times and gamers just have Stockholm Syndrome. So I'm just going to say that yes, this is something I want to play. I hope it turns out great, I hope the game sells well, and yes, it looks super cool. But I'm probably going to wait for either a demo, if we do get a demo, or wait until reviews come out before I even pick it up, because I can't shake the feeling that this is all going to play out in an all too familiar fashion that we've all seen a million times before. But that's all for me though, it's just my general thoughts on Wild Hearts, but yeah, thank you all for watching, and good luck out there, hunters.